All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to give a few more minutes for folks to get situated. And I'm going to drop in just a couple of intro questions for folks to start dropping your answers into the chat.
Fun to see people joining this morning. Dark and wet outside my window. Just how we like it at this time of year.
I think one of my favorite things about the Pacific Northwest is even in the winter, at least by Portland, there's still a lot of greenery, which was very different than the Northeast where I grew up, where everything is bald during the winter.
Yes, and the leaves turned later this year, so I got to have more time here on campus. There are a lot of ginkgo trees that make these huge carpets of ginkgo leaves. So I think we're just going to let folks come in, and it's great seeing everyone putting things into the chat.
And then I will drop these back in to the chat for anyone who joined a little bit later. And then I'm going to advance the slides and just talk about a couple quick upcoming events. And for anyone who has not been on one of our calls before, my name is Shin. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Oregon Community Food Systems Network network coordinator. And some of the really exciting upcoming events. Don't worry about taking a ton of notes because we will send out the PDF of these slides after this meeting, as well as the recording. And you'll be able to use all these hyperlinks for the rest of this month. We have a handful of VegRx working group related calls, including hearing from Care Oregon about how to use health related service funds, as well as some results from the 2021 VegRx program data review. And then we will be having a food hub working group open house on the 20th. And then for 2023, we have a few exciting things on the calendar already. We are currently in the process of working on a equity assessment. So January 17th, we will be having a BIPOC-centered info session for that. And then February 1st, we'll have another info session that we will be recording for everyone. And you can attend in person. And then February 2nd and 3rd, Andrew is hosting a Farming for the Future convening, which will be in person in Salem.
Thanks, Shin. Well, let's charge on in. We have about 30 folks here. I think a few more will be joining. So my name is Lauren Gwynn. I've been with this network since before it was born. I love this network. It's been amazing to watch it evolve and to build relationships with many of you over the years. I'm at Oregon State University with the Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems. I have a passion about public policy, and it's mostly my passion is about people figuring out how to swim in that water so that they can use public policy to achieve the world they want. So this group is an amazing example of that, and we've been learning how to do that together. So our food systems network did not start as a policy network. We started as a different kind of network. And in 2017-ish or 2016-ish, we said, you know, we could do some stuff with policy together. And this year, we have evolved in a great new way. Anybody who knows me knows I love to tell stories. I'm not going to do that this morning, but you're all welcome to get in touch with me to ask, how did this happen? Happy to share. So just two quick starts here before we jump into our first plenary. Everybody, I want you to remember what our goal is. Our goal as a network is to grow our capacity to influence policy to achieve our vision. And we do this in really specific ways. You can see all the nouns and verbs. Again, this is on all of our materials, but I just like to bring it up. And the last one's really important. We're doing that across our working groups, learning how to walk our equity talk in a meaningful and effective way in this work. Can we have the next slide? Great. So I also want to introduce Eric Chi. He's going to wave. And Eric is our public policy intern. Super happy to have him. If you are part of the two new working groups we have, you will be interacting with Eric more regularly. Otherwise, you will just see him here in convenings. So we changed our public policy, our policy committee to two committees, two working groups. One focuses on the legislature, the Oregon legislature. And the other one is broader in terms of how do we scale up related to public policy? What are other arenas where public policy happens, where we could be active? All of the information is on our website. There's the link, easy to find through the awesome OCFSN website. Thank you, Shin, can't say that enough. So let's quickly jump into our first plenary. Super happy to have Taylor Sarman here. Sometime last year, can't remember when, we had a conversation about, oh yeah, the legislature is changing. We better figure out what it's going to look like afterwards before we go into the 2023 session. So thanks, Taylor, for coming back to help us walk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. It's really a privilege to be here speaking with you all this morning. So as Lauren said, my name's Taylor Sarman. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the privilege of helping to represent Friends of Family Farm. Someone muted me, but now I'm unmuted. So I represent FOF through the legislative process and really passionate about the work that this group of folks does in the Capitol and that you all do in your own organizing and advocacy work. So really happy to be here. If you want to advance the slide, we can get into the top line. So as Lauren alluded to, if you had turned your TV on at any point in the last couple of months, you knew that there was an election going on. Or if you checked your post office box, you also knew there was an election going on. Lots of folks asking for your vote. And I think, you know, obviously our election this last time was historic in that we had 3 candidates, really a competitive election. And I'll get to the governor's election in a little bit. But the other thing that I think is really, just as a top line before we talk about the makeup, is that, you know, the legislature has went through quite a bit of turnover. Lots of folks decided to retire at the end of the 2022 session, which left a lot of open spots for people to run for the legislature during this last election cycle. If you were following the national punditry at all, I think the national conversation was really this notion about a red wave reaching throughout Congress, reaching throughout state legislatures and some statewide offices. And I think that really didn't materialize in Oregon, and it didn't materialize in a lot of other states. Unless you live in the panhandle of Florida, that's about where the red wave started, and also that's where it ended as well. And so from the Oregon context, you know, we really are not seeing, while who is in the legislature is changing, the control based on party affiliation isn't really changing all that much. As you can see by this lovely pie chart here, the Republicans in Oregon picked up one extra seat that they didn't normally have, or that they didn't have in the previous election. And so that leads us to believe it'll be pretty similar to what we've seen in other legislative sessions in terms of party control, committee membership sizes, and all of those good things. Next slide, please. So the House is in a, with Governor-elect Kotek running for governor and not being speaker, that has kind of opened up this speakership. We lived through, Speaker Rayfield in the 2022 session. That will continue to be, that's very likely to continue into the 2023 session as well. The way this works is the legislative caucuses, the Democratic caucus elects a designate who in all conventional wisdom will become the leadership and the speaker in the Oregon House. That does have to wait until the whole chamber comes in January to actually make that vote happen. But I think conventional wisdom is that Speaker Rayfield will continue being speaker and Representative Holvey will continue to be Speaker Pro Tem. There are a little bit of changes in leadership. As you can see, there's some new folks who have worked their way up into the Democratic leadership, so will play a more prominent role in the Democrats caucus. Republicans, I don't think we've seen a formal caucus vote, but I think it's likely that we'll continue to see the same with Republican leadership in the House as well, with Representative Reese Iverson continuing to be the Republican leader. Next slide, please. So that gets us to what I think is the most interesting thing that we all will navigate through the legislative process in 2023. There are a lot of new folks, brand new members who 2023 will be their first session across both political spectrums. So just by looking at this list, this is a pretty significant chunk of the Oregon legislature who will all be brand new. And the other context I'll provide as well on this is that with the COVID pandemic and construction that's happened in the Capitol, in addition to this list, there are several legislators who have not served in the legislature through a full in-person session where lobbyists like me and advocates like you all are following legislators around the Capitol, trying to get them to talk about your bills and things that you care about. So it really will be a new type of experience for a lot of those folks, I think, to have a more active in-person legislative session. The other top line, I think that I'll just on that last slide, but the top line I would say is the diversity of the legislature has really increased in the 2023 session. And I think that is a really exciting thing for Oregonians. Some folks may have seen, for the first time in our nation's history, we'll have 5 Vietnamese Oregonians serving in the Oregon legislature. That's a first of any state legislature in the country. And so that is a really exciting thing. And I think what that will continue to do, as folks may be aware, there is a BIPOC caucus of legislators in Oregon. I think as the number and diversity of legislators grows, it really empowers and assists the BIPOC caucus in helping to make decisions and influence decisions through the legislative process. So I think that's an exciting takeaway from the 2023 or the 2022 election as well. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about the House. The Senate, I think, as I mentioned about the House, not a whole lot of change. The Senate is kind of in a different situation in that while Republicans did pick up one seat in the Senate, it'll stay pretty similar to the way that we've seen with Democratic control of the Oregon State Senate. It is kind of an interesting makeup because in Oregon, we do have 2 folks who caucus as independents, who were previously Republicans, and typically, I think, vote as most Republicans do in the legislature. But still, it's a 17, roughly 13 split, which means the Democrats have a majority, and for most policy decisions, if their caucus locks up can pass the things that they want to pass. I think it's the next slide that we talk about Senate leadership. So what's exciting about and interesting about the Senate's makeup is for the first time in several decades, the Oregon State Senate will have a new Senate president. The Democratic caucus has met, and their caucus has nominated the previous majority leader, Senator Rob Wagner, to be the Senate president designate. So similar to the House, the Senate president is voted and elected by the entire chamber. And so that won't be official until the Senate comes in January to officially make that happen. It only takes 17 votes or 16 votes, excuse me, to become the Senate president. And as I mentioned, Democrats have 17. So the most likely outcome is that Senator Rob Wagner will be Senate president, which I think is, it's a new Senate president, new Senate majority leader, lots of change in the Senate leadership as well. Some of it more historic, as I mentioned, with, the first time in several decades, we'll have a new Senate president. So seeing how that relationship works with the House, I think will be interesting. And then also, I just would note that the Senate leadership in the Democratic caucus has also, there's also some changes there that I think are worthy of mentioning. So Senator-elect Wednesday Campos is the youngest woman ever elected to the Oregon State Senate and will also be serving in Senate leadership. So I think that's an exciting, fresh new perspective that the Senate Democratic leadership will have going into the 2023 session. And I think the Senate Republican leader is likely to continue to be Senator Knopp. I will say it's pretty clear that there was a press release in which Senator Knopp expressed some thoughts about the Democrats nominating Senator Wagner for the Senate presidency designate spot. That was, really, I think, setting the stage for what's going to be a likely partisan dynamic in the Oregon State Senate this session, which is a little bit different, I think, than we have seen in other legislative sessions recently. One other thing that was on your ballot that applies, I think, more specifically to the Senate is that Oregonians voted to prevent legislators from having too many unexcused absences, which some of you will recall. There have been legislative walkouts throughout the history of Oregon in which senators or House members deny quorum, and it halts everything to a stop in the legislative process. This new ballot measure is likely to impact how those political maneuvers happen, or if they happen at all. And I think the Senate is a little bit closer with a 17-13 split, so I think it'll have more meaningful impact on what happens in that chamber in 2023. I think we're ready for the next slide. So similar to the House, the Senate has got a lot of new members. What's interesting about the Senate's new members, though, is most of them are coming from the other side of the building, the Oregon State House, with Representative Hayden becoming the new state senator from District 6, Representative Weber becoming the new state senator from District 16, Representative Campos coming over from the House and being the new state senator for District 18. And then in what was one of the most closest elections this cycle is Representative Meek ousting incumbent state senator Bill Kinnemer to take the Senate District 20 seat during the 2023 session and for the next 4 years. And then Representative Bonham coming from the House as well for the Senate District 26. So lots of new faces in the Senate. The good news is those folks have in varying capacities served in the Oregon House. So I think we'll have a good understanding of the legislative process and what all to expect. Senator-elect Aaron Woods from the Tigard-Kaiser area will be the new state senator who has not served in the House, but did serve on the Clackamas Community College Board of Education. And I think also, with these additions, the diversity of the Oregon State Senate will also increase, which I think is exciting to further grow out the caucus on both sides of the chamber, or both sides of the building. Next slide. So that was just some quick overview of who's going to be there, what's going to happen. I know you all will have access to this. As you can see, we're kind of in this early December category, and we've got kind of a lot of next steps to go until we get to when the session is set to begin on January 17th. And then it's off to the races. Everybody will be working on their individual and coalition legislative concepts, and we'll race till June 25, where they're set to constitutionally sine die or adjourn and end the business that they are sent to do for the 2023 session. Lots of variables still. I will tell you, we don't know who committee chairs are going to be. We don't know what committee membership is going to look like. And so that obviously influences how we all navigate the legislative process, who we're meeting with and who we're talking to. I expect here in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that information. And then we'll start strategizing, setting up our legislative meetings. We also don't know what all the bills are that are going to be introduced. And I think that there's always thousands and thousands and thousands of bills that get introduced in a long legislative session. And so there's always surprises about things that folks didn't expect to see get injected into the legislative process. And I think that will happen likely in 2023 as well. All right, next slide. So as I mentioned kind of at the start, we had a really historic election in Oregon with 3 really prominent candidates for governor. The top line message is that Democrats will continue to control the governor's mansion for the next 4 years. As you can see, I think some folks thought this would be a little bit closer of an election, but relative to previous voter turnout and previous election results, I think this is a pretty standard bearer example of just Oregonian voters over the last several election cycles. And so, we folks may know that, Governor-elect Kotek served as Speaker of the House, has a long legislative history and a long advocacy background. So I think particularly in food systems and mostly food systems work and housing, as she's served in the legislature. I think it'll be really interesting to see her bring that experience into the governor's office. Obviously it's been a pretty long time. We've had Governor Brown for a while. And so not a lot of folks have lived through a transition with the new governor. And I think that is what is happening right now, is that Governor-elect Kotek has put together her transition team, starting to think about pulling together a governor's recommended budget that she has to get to the legislature by February 1, which means reviewing all of the agency request budgets that currently exist, all of the policy option packages and legislative proposals that exist for agencies that all happened under a previous governor. So figuring out how that will tie into what she wants to achieve in the 2023 session and how she wants to set up her state agencies. Still a lot of unknowns. I will say that, the benefit of transitioning from one Democratic governor to another Democratic governor is it does make the transition a little bit more seamless, a little bit more smooth than if Oregon would be living through transitioning from a Democratic governor to a Republican governor, just because of the players who will continue to be involved. I think are likely to stay similar, but they're obviously, with any new governor, there's going to be shakeups, there's going to be new agency directors, new policy advising staff for the governor, and lots of unknowns still. But I think, like I said, with the governor-elect's background, lots of good opportunity for all of the folks on this call to be engaged and start communicating priorities to her and her new team. Next slide, I think. So I talked a little bit about the transition that we're working on. I think one of the things that is really a good opportunity right now is for things that are currently in agencies' budgets, their requests. As I said, the governor-elect and her team are going to go through those budgets and determine what stays in and what gets cut or what gets added. And so I think if there's things that folks on this call really care about that's currently in the Human Services Agency's budget or the Oregon Department of Ag's budget, now is a really good time to be working with our partners in those agencies to help communicate the support that exists for those things in the budget. Alternatively, if you don't like things that are in those budgets, it's also a good time to communicate that to the new governor-elect and her team as she's deciding what is going to stay and what's going to go. And then I think that gets me to our Q&A, and I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any additional context that would be helpful for folks.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And I think what we're going to do right now is we will have some time for clarifying questions, and then we've built in a ton of time, well, not a ton, but a bunch of time for you all to ask each other questions in the breakouts. So Amy Wong, you can raise your hand again if you have a clarifying question. Otherwise, I'm jumping to Megan.
It's not a clarifying question per se, and I'll just put it out there, and sorry, my computer's being weird. I would love to get Taylor's thoughts on how it's going to run, being that the building is still under construction. So it's going to be kind of I'm hearing this combo hybrid model, and I've heard people say, we know how to do hybrid, we know how to do virtual, we know how to do in person. We don't yet know how we're going to do hybrid. Just wanting to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there are still a lot of unknowns, but I think everybody who is, a lobbying practitioner is expecting to be in the building and following legislators around their office spaces and trying to get time. I think it will still be hybrid in that, the testimony that will be received will still be able to be done virtually. I expect that to continue. I think that legislators have really enjoyed that, and it's been helpful to get folks all across the state in and access to their state capital. So I think that'll continue to be the case. I will say the one thing that, so both wings of the Capitol will be open, but most of the space in between. So the last time I was at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago, you couldn't walk inside the building from the House side to the Senate side. You had to go through security, get into the House side, leave the House side, walk outside in the rain, come back around to the Senate side, go through security again to get into the Senate chamber. I think their goal is to have a walkway open so that folks don't have to go outside. But I think that for the most part, there will not be a lot of community space in the Capitol. So lobbyists like me, for example, have access to previously a Capitol Club lounge down in the dark depths of the Oregon Capitol's basement. We don't have access to that anymore. That's an outside building that we'll have to leave the Capitol to go to. So I think as you're thinking about lobby days or getting your members or getting folks that you work with into the Capitol, there's not going to be a lot of space for folks to sit or congregate or have meetings. It really will be just the two chambers and their office spaces that are open. So
let's take 2 more questions and then go into groups. We have a speaker coming right at 10. Megan, go ahead.
Taylor, this is similar to Melina's question in the chat. If there's a budget agency budget request item that we're really excited about, you mentioned that we could express that support to the agencies. We have done that over and over. And then you said if we had concerns about something to communicate that to the governor's office, do you think there's value and or any opportunity to communicate our priorities to the governor's office directly before February 1st?
Beyond beyond budgets?
No, I mean budgets. Do you think it's appropriate to communicate our budget priorities to the governor's office before February 1st if there's something we do want to support that's already in the agency requests?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think if I were working at a state agency, I would be wanting to demonstrate to a new governor some strong support for the things that I put in or we put in to our budget request. So I really think that the agency can be your best partner in helping to communicate that to the governor's office or the governor-elect's office.
Okay.
So I would definitely work in
Coordinate
tandem
with them. Okay.
I think this is a topic we've discussed in the policy committee for the last few years. Budget advocacy is different from bill advocacy. and it's a different pattern. And it just, if you're not familiar with it, just hearing Megan ask that question and Taylor answering it, it's complex. We'll definitely take that up in the community food systems at the legislature working group, and then think about how we communicate that back out to the rest of the network. So yes, I think that covers Melina's question too. Let's go in. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much. These slides we'll hold on to because there's so much info in them, and share them out. We're going to go into breakouts now, and Shin has put in the chat the document with the shared notes. If you've been to an OCFSN mini convening, you know how this works. So Eric is going to put you into groups.
Or I've got to run in groups, so I'm gonna open
Oh,
up the
Shin's already
rooms.
got them.
You're gonna have about 4 or 5 people in your room. Just make sure you click on that link for the Google Doc, and you all have edit access. So yeah, help us take some good notes, and I hope you all have good discussions.
It's about your legislators and the governor. Okay, great. Thanks, Shin. Thanks, Taylor. Hey, everyone, welcome back. I hope that you had great conversations. The fact that I still see 30 people on this call, which is pretty close to what we started with, makes me think that you had really great conversations. So I look forward to looking at the notes. We are pretty quickly going to switch to our guest. Eric, where are we with that?
Scheduled for 10. I'm not really sure.
Well, so our next step, what we're moving into here is another plenary. Okay, based on what you all discussed, based on what we heard before, let's translate this into the specific session coming up. And we have a guest today, Representative Ken Helm, who's going to come in and share some thoughts, a legislator's view on these issues. I think we'll have about 20 minutes with him. And then we're going to have a few case studies, 3 of them, just like 5 minutes from OCFSN member organizations about particular issues and bills they're following and how they think this legislature will take them up, or this governor. What are the implications? And then the last part of the plenary will be Eric is going to introduce or reintroduce you to the way that we keep track of all of this stuff during the session. So do we have our guest speaker here? If we don't, we can spend this time. Why don't folks put in the chat? Great. Megan is, oh, this is really important information, everyone. Since legislative districts are going to change on January 1st, you will need to go back after the new year and figure out, are my legislators still my legislators? So that's a great thing to send out to remind folks. Anything that came up in the chat while we're waiting for Representative Helm, not that came up in the chat, that came up in the breakout sessions that you'd like to put into the chat. Something interesting, something puzzling.
We're having a Farming for the Future convening in February in Salem, and it occurred to Andrew and I that we might have some legislator meetings in association with that convening. Interesting.
Cool. And I would like to remind everyone, we haven't spent a lot of time on it in the plenaries, but this network is has a wealth of information on what is legal and what is not in terms of what nonprofit organizations can do. And a lot of times you can do a lot more than you ever imagined. So we have great folks here who know that inside and out. And we also have some great materials on the OCFSN website on the policy committee page. Oh, great. Sammy shared a map to look up addresses in the new districts. What's something else that came up in your groups?
If it's okay for me to chime in, we talked a little bit about having some longtime legislators who are still in their seats which is great, who are generally supportive of our issues, but we talked about the need to activate those folks and make them go from generally supportive to understanding that this isn't, that our issues are issues that their district cares about.
Great. Thanks, Alice. Anyone have something similar? Or different?
We talked about the governor's role right now and how the governor's role right now, the most important piece is really that budget piece because of the agency's recommended budget and the governor's recommended budget that Taylor mentioned that's coming out on February 1, and how important it is to have the governor's support for agency budget priorities, more so than for legislative right now, maybe.
Well, that's really important. So on this call, all of you on this call, if you are wondering how the heck do we track that? How do we track the budget and what is the process? Give us a thumbs up or a wave or some sort of reaction. I know that, you know, a few years ago, I was like, oh, what? That's a totally different timeline. Or put it in the chat. Like, how are you feeling about, is this something that you would like to have a little training on, a little peer support? Okay, no one's saying. Well, that's all right, because we have our guests here now. Eric, would you like to go ahead and introduce Representative Helm?
Yeah, Representative Ken Helm is the representative for District 34, and he's the chair of the Committee on Agriculture, Land Use, and Water. I'll let him take it away from there, I guess.
Well, good morning, folks. It's nice to be with you for a few minutes. Can everybody hear me? Great. Thanks for including me. Okay, I'm just trying to get the video here that in a way that makes sense to me. There we go. All right. Well, for those of you who I've worked with before, it's nice to see you this morning. And for folks that I haven't crossed paths with before, a little bit of my history. I joined the legislature in 2015, and as the slide says, I represented at that time a swath of both Southwest Portland and the city of Beaverton. That has changed a little bit. My new district is District 27, and it includes Cedar Hills, the city of Beaverton and South, Cedar Mill, and a little bit of West Haven behind St. Vincent's Hospital. But I have served on the Ag and Natural Resources committees under various names since 2015, either as the vice chair or now as the chair. So, and have been very happy to do so. My career background was in as a land use attorney, and I did land use law in various forms all over the state for about 25 years. Right now, I'm the chair of the Ag, Land Use, and Water Committee. It's an interim committee. We are still working out both membership of committees and the subject matter for each one. I very much hope to chair this committee again through the 2023 session. And it's a great aggregation of topic areas. As you know, water, land use, and ag go together really well. And I know you're all influenced by energy decisions in the state as well, and both the memberships that you represent and particularly our smaller agricultural community is very dependent on energy being reliable and low cost to do business. What my calendar notes say is that you'd like a little bit of outlook on the legislative session coming out of the election, and then some of my priorities. Is that still correct? Okay, good. Well, some of this may be old news, but I'll give you my spin on it. We you know, through the numbers that both the House and the Senate are still held by a Democratic majority. And we obviously have a Democratic governor. The majorities in both the Senate and the House have shrunk for Democrats. And what I think that means is that we will need to have closer collaboration and more bipartisanship than we've had in the past. There are very few members now, I'm not one of them, but I'll mention this, that remember the 2009 session in which the chambers were equally split. And the mythology that comes out of that session is pretty encouraging in that a lot of good things were accomplished at that time in a bipartisan manner. I certainly hope that we are coming back to that, particularly because I feel like agricultural issues in general have not gotten the attention that, or the type of attention that they deserve in recent years. And with a need for closer collaboration with our rural colleagues, agriculture in general can be elevated as an important issue for the future. So I see that on the House side. Many of you who I'm working with more closely know that I've formed a close working relationship with Representative Mark Owens from Harney County. He is the vice chair, has been the vice chair of the Water Committee, and is the vice chair of the Ag, Land Use and Water Committee right now. He and I have formed up on issues around water, not a complete joint legislative agenda, but very close. And that's intentional. We want water issues across the board, whether they are small community, agricultural, fish and wildlife, municipal, irrigation district, to become nonpartisan. Because we don't think that we can make progress on water and the allocation of water where we want and need it if partisanship interferes. And so far so good on that. Part of our working together has resulted in some of the biggest budget allocations for water that in a couple of decades. Whether we can make that stick is to be seen, and certainly your member organizations will have a say in that. We need to keep waterfront and center and for both the governor and my colleagues. In the Senate, I'm encouraged because again, it's a close majority for the Democrats. I'm encouraged by the new Democratic leadership, all of whom I know well. The new majority leader is my senator. And so I've been pestering her on water and energy in particular, and trying to bring her into my orbit, so to speak, at least in the topic areas that we care about. And she has been very positive about that. And so I hope that she continues there. I'm also encouraged by the Senate Minority Leader, Knopp. His district being in Central Oregon and needing to both take account of ecological needs for water, the role of agriculture, particularly in the North Unit Irrigation District, and water in general because of the scarcity is a good thing. He wouldn't tell you, I don't think, that he's an expert in water, but he knows it's important to his district, and therefore the issue will be elevated. And so all that should relate to a little bit higher visibility for food growing in the state, money toward smart projects that make the best of our water in all sorts of applications, but certainly at all levels of agriculture. So that's how I see the makeup. On the House side, I'll just note that Speaker-elect, I would say, Rayfield, places a high value on economic development across the state. And part of that, in particular, with his location in the Mid-Valley, sensitizes him to agricultural issues, probably more than Speaker Kotek had. So I'm encouraged there. Also, on the governor's side, I worked for a long time with Tina Kotek and her chief of staff, Tim Inman. I know they care about rural Oregon in particular, and the places that we grow food and the people that need it. So I know that Tina is very genuinely concerned about people in need, whether it's hunger or housing, or electricity bills or water availability. She's very genuine about that. And I've been bending her ear about water all summer. So I hope that I've been explicit, and so has Mark Owens, that we would like her to elevate water and agricultural issues in the way that we've elevated other important social needs in the past, like when we expanded healthcare to all Oregonians, and like when we passed the Student Success Act to try to get Oregon educational funding back on track. So that's the lay of the land. Anybody want to ask a question about any of that before I move into legislative priorities? And I can't.
Oh, we got a question. Go ahead, Nellie.
Hi, Nellie.
Hi, Representative Helm. Good to see you, and thank you so much for sharing with us today. You were speaking to Governor-elect Kotek's dedication to people in need, including affordable housing. One of my concerns as board president of Thousand Friends is that there will be a push to expand urban growth boundaries in the name of affordable housing. And I've seen, editorials in the Oregonian. I've seen different red herrings for that argument, that simply the issue is not having enough land and that will address affordable housing. This affects our ability to farm, especially in peri-urban areas, and to afford that farmland, but it also doesn't address the issues of affordable housing, which is more related to infrastructure and the price of units rather than simply surface area. And so I just wanted to hear if you'd been hearing similar currents, or if you know of any legislation that's coming forward that would weaken our land use program in the name of something like affordable housing.
It's a great question, Nellie, and thanks for setting me up to be on a soapbox that I'm trying to stand on in this. But first, to answer your question, I have not been privy or been brought any legislative concepts that weaken urban growth boundaries. That doesn't, so far so good on that. I think that there will be some. I think we're going to have some really important conversations during this session. As you correctly pointed out, on the campaign trail, Governor Kotek raised housing as her #1 issue over and over, and she knows the numbers. They're meaningful. They're statewide in the amount of units that we are behind in obtaining versus our need. there will be the opportunity for the folks that are on the side of a little bit more free market approach to housing, such as our home builders and our realtors, to reset the conversation there in the way that they believe is correct. So I think we're going to have the conversation. So be ready for it. I don't know whether we're going to reach a new social compact on this as a state. I will note that our land use system is 50 years old, and so are urban growth boundaries. We've tinkered with how we manage urban growth boundaries a lot, so much so that I'm not sure some of the changes that or alternatives that we have offered for communities to go about urban growth boundary expansions have all been tried out successfully or non-successfully. So there's still room for that, and those are existing programs. So stand by on that. To get on my soapbox for a minute, though, particularly for this group and your memberships, it seems that whenever we talk about urban growth boundaries at the legislature, we get into an area of magical thinking that I think is destructive to the notion of preserving farmland. And that is folks that are concerned about efficient land use around cities will argue vehemently for the saving of lands immediately outside urban growth boundaries, as if those lands were the absolute best lands in the universe for growing food. We know that that is, in most cases, not true because the urban areas have compromised those farmlands in various ways. What I would urge you and your membership to think about doing is use the conversation that we know is coming to talk about the real loss of ag lands across the state. Whether it is the inability to use lands because they have become uneconomic, or they lack adequate water, they lack adequate management capabilities or the appropriate inputs, and they've either just gone fallow or they have been close enough to urban areas to fall into either quasi-urban use or urban use. There's not enough focus on that. We know that we are losing valuable farmland decade over decade. There's not been any real programmatic way to stop it. Our Ag Heritage program, which Nellie did so much great work and others like Megan Kemple to secure funding for and establish the program over the years. We need to enhance that program so that farmers facing generational changes or other management challenges have a place to go to get help. And so keep your eye on that one. I know you know about it. That's my soapbox on that. Let me just segue, because I know we're getting close to the time that we allotted here, into another exciting program that should be an initiative if it's successful within the Ag Heritage program, and that is a Healthy Soils program. And I don't know whether Megan Kemple has given you the lowdown on that or not, but she's the expert. She's been working with my office and my chief of staff, Greg Mintz, very closely, and we're really excited about the opportunity to initiate a Healthy Soils program around this in the state. Right now, the focus is just getting it established and getting the right partner agencies and entities into support roles. We have had a lot of discussion in the state, in particular at the Global Warming Commission, about the benefits of healthy soils for carbon capture and for GHG reduction. We won't see the promise of that until we start incenting best management practices and giving farmers the resources to understand how their operations could benefit by healthy soils, and get some implementation on the ground so that we can have teams throughout the state that can help do that. I hope that you all will get behind that effort. We'll need, this is another issue that can be completely bipartisan. It's an incentive-based program that we need. It's worked well in other parts of the country where they've had some sort of incentive-based programs. It takes the Global Warming Commission's recommendations and gets on the ground in a proactive way, which is something I really think we need right now in the state as we try to battle climate change. There's so many things that we can't control around climate change as Oregonians, but this is something that we can. And the better we do it, the better off our farmers will be, and the better shape we are in reaching our already stated climate goals. So maybe I should stop there and take any questions. I know we've only slotted 20 minutes and I don't want to steal time from other things.
That's terrific, Representative Hellman. I'm scribbling down notes about this is exactly the kind of challenge, food systems challenge, that we designed this network to be able to talk about. And it's not about, individual members of the network. We're going to convince everybody else. It's like, we're going to have a wide diversity of questions and concerns. And in this network, we can have that conversation. So, and those of you, some of you will remember that in 2019 at our last in-person convening, we had, it was the Affordable Housing Alliance, or is it the Affordable Housing Coalition? I can't remember, but Allison came and spoke with us, and a number of OCFSN member organizations are part of that. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Questions for Representative Helm? Everyone's taking it in.
I have a question, actually. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Alice Morrison with the Friends of Family Farmers, and I was wondering if you could speak briefly about the drought relief package that you all are considering and how that would impact some of the folks that we work with.
Thanks for the question. What I'm struggling with right now is to take some of the standalone bills and ideas that we have that are clearly water scarcity related and fit them into a narrative that helps folks understand both what we already have started and what we've already funded, and then I am thinking a lot about how we fit projects into near-term, mid-term, and long-term categories so that we understand how we fund them over time. So certainly I think there's be a lot of attention paid to the type of money that we've spent at both in 2021 for the drought package and in the emergency board over this last interim. My philosophy is this: drought or water scarcity is the new normal. I am planning from that perspective, and I want the legislature to plan from that perspective. That's going to take long-term money. It's going to take some funding structures similar to what we have in other parts of our budget, like the rainy day fund or the educational stability fund. That means a fund that survives biennia to biennia and is not swept into other things. I will be advocating strongly for that. And then it matters how much of that fund we hold for emergency purposes, and how much we can allocate to those near and midterm issues, so that we get rolling with things like drought resistant crops, healthy soils, erosion programs that we already have that are inadequately funded. And then, of course, just having contingency funds on hand that keep farms financially alive until they can catch their breath in a season or two. That's what we just experienced. I know that your members have experienced some real trauma out there. And it's part of the money that we allocated in 2021 and through the emergency board was just to have some money on hand to help people make it through. I hope we aren't beset by something that was as hard and damaging as the heat dome was. But we have to prepare for that. And part of that is just helping farmers make it to their next opportunity to have some income. So those are stay tuned, please. We'll have something soon.
Well,
and we'll be asking for a healthy amount of money, and we'll need your support.
thanks, Alice, for asking that question. Thanks for that answer. I think, putting together and implementing the Oregon Community Food Systems Network with partners disaster relief mini grant program was really eye-opening for a lot of us, not just in terms of the problems, but the way that kind of relief money moves at the federal and state level, and also how it doesn't move. So some of us who geek out on those implementation questions are going to want to dive into those details with you and others who are actually putting it into practice. We sure learned a lot, didn't we? Any other questions for the representative?
I should really sign off.
Okay.
I've enjoyed being with you. I have to be in Hood
Thank
River
you.
to talk about water at noon. And if I get on the road now, I'll make it. Please don't be shy about getting in touch with my office and my Chief of Staff, Greg Mintz. He's the best way to find me. And we're always happy to talk about the issues that you're concerned about. So
Thank you very
Thanks
much
for
for
having me.
making time.
You bet. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was fascinating. So, Shin put in the chat, I'm pretty sure it's probably a link to the article about the disaster relief program.
So this is the 2-pager impact report, and we have not widely published it yet, so y'all will be the first to see it, but we are also planning a press release as well for just looking at the 108 grants that we were able to distribute in the last year.
That
Great.
link actually took me to a directory of shared drive. It didn't take me to an article.
Oh, okay, hold on. I will
Cool.
resend that link.
Great. Well, while Shin is doing that, we are going to move on to the planning team for this mini convening. Had a great idea about having a few case studies of how does this change in the legislature and the governor affect the issues that we are working on specifically through legislation. And Eric, what order are we going in here? Oh, we're going with FOF, soil health, and then double up food bucks. There it is right in front of me. So Alice, want to jump in?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Alice Morrison. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the 2 co-directors of Friends of Family Farmers. And as you heard from Taylor earlier, there is a lot of change, but also some things have remained relatively stable. So we are putting forward a couple of bills from FOF directly, and many of you on this call have helped us with those concepts and have been part of our policy creation process over the last year with our focus groups and survey and then the more targeted outreach that we did afterwards. So first, I just want to say thank you to all of you for that participation. And we are also supporting many bills in coalition, including, you'll hear from Megan next, the Healthy Soils package. FOF is definitely on board with increasing resources for Healthy Soils programming across the state. The bill that I wanted to talk about today is our Farm Direct marketing law changes. So FOF and OSU and many folks on this call were integral to passing the Farm Direct producer process exemption about 10 years ago. And since then, we have learned a lot in the implementation of the law. Many farmers, especially some on this call, have come to rely on that law for their business model and for bringing their value-added products to market. This is the law that allows farmers to produce certain low-risk value-added products like pickles, lactoferments, jams, jellies, fruits, and syrup, that kind of thing, and bring it to market to sell direct to consumer without the use of a commercial kitchen, as long as they have grown all of the principal ingredients. So we are introducing some additions, changes, clarifications in this session. Brittany, if you could, my colleague Brittany is on the call. If you could drop the link to our concept, there it is. You can read more about that there. And this has been traditionally a very bipartisan issue because it is about creating opportunities for small farmers to extend their season, give them a shelf-stable product that they can sell in many venues as long as it's direct to consumer, and to create pathways to better business viability for small farms who are getting off of their first few seasons. Or if this is a long-term part of your business, it diversifies your offerings and brings something more to the table and reduces waste. And there's just a plethora of reasons why this is a great thing that folks across the aisle on both sides have seen. So our strategy has remained largely unchanged on this, which I think is important to note, that you don't have to, not every campaign will pivot dramatically after each election. We do have we have bipartisan support already through our the folks who have put in the bill drafts for us. We have a Democrat in the House and a Republican sponsor in the Senate, and we're moving forward with our general strategy about talking to folks who have farms in their district who this impacts very heavily, and are moving forward with our messaging around the benefit that this brings to the farmers that we serve. So that part of our strategy remains unchanged. It's been a bipartisan issue in the past and continues to be a place where we build bridges. Not everything that we work on enjoys such good bipartisan support, and we are very excited to bring these changes and additions and clarifications forward to solve problems for the folks on the ground and create more opportunities for the farmers that we serve. So it's not an exciting update, but I think it is very valuable to note that a lot of the things that we work on are in the small farm space are bipartisan issues when you talk about them with folks across the spectrum of ideologies, because we're at our core creating opportunities for farmers to thrive here in Oregon. So I think that is the update that I wanted to share. And please check out our policy report and our Farm Direct page on our website. That's where all the updates will be posted. If this is an issue that you care about, bookmark that and you'll be able to see everything as we follow along.
Thank you, Alice. I think one of the important things to take away about Farm Direct, it's yet another opportunity for us to be clear about what we're talking about. I think Farm Direct is often labeled as fancy stuff in jars for fancy people who have a lot of money to spend on that. Like, what does that have to do with food security? Well, turn it around. This is actually called rural economic development and, small business development, and having multiple streams of income to support, the kind of rural business or farming business And anybody who runs a small farm knows that you don't get rich on jams and jellies, but there's a lot of other benefits it brings to your business. So those kinds of framings are really useful when you're talking to legislators, right, Alice? So I appreciate that. I think we have Megan on next.
Great. Hi. I'm going to share my screen with a couple of quick slides about the Healthy Soils Bill. So here is, just start from the beginning. Oregon Climate and I'm with Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network. My name is Megan Kempel. I'm our Director of Policy Advocacy. And we are advocating for taking the lead on advancing a Healthy Soils Bill for the 2023 legislative session. And the bill includes some really great language about why soil health is important. The primary focus of the bill is to create a new soil health initiative within the state of Oregon. The bill lays out the purpose of the soil health initiative, as well as some goals of the initiative, and creates a soil health advisory committee. It focuses on interagency collaboration. So collaboration between the Department of Agriculture, OSU, both Extension and the College of Ag research folks, as well as the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. It lays out specific roles for each of those entities and allows for new entities to participate in the initiative going forward. An important part of the initiative, and one of the pieces that we won't let go of if we have to cut things, are soil health grants. As part of, hopefully, as part of the Oregon Ag Heritage Program's Conservation Management Plan grants. And it directs the state to create a soil health roadmap. Our approach is aligned. I should note that Representative Helm, who just spoke, is our legislative champion. So he spoke about it. He's taken the lead on it with us. And we are really trying to focus on soil health, which has multiple climate benefits and climate resilience benefits, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, as well as climate resilience benefits. But our focus in the bill and in our messaging will be primarily on focusing on soil health and not on specific practices laid out in the bill, but soil health principles and some direction for the state to identify practices that will evolve over time. These are the 4 soil health principles that we're focusing on. And our approach, and what the question that we're supposed to be answering here is, what does the new legislature mean for our strategy and for our bill? So we are looking at introducing a pretty comprehensive policy. It includes interagency collaboration, and our approach is to really work across the ag community. So that will include working with OCFSN partners like all of you, as well as other members of the agricultural community, including the Oregon Farm Bureau, Cattlemen's Association, and others, to talk with them about we've had multiple meetings with those potential supporters, and to talk with them about their concerns about our strategy, and to try to address those concerns. And we're also going to be working across parties in our legislative strategy. So working to encourage support from both Democrats and Republicans. And we have obviously strong support from Representative Helm, and he mentioned his counterpart, who is a Republican, Rep. Owens. And Rep. Owens is the co-chair with him of the Ag Committee. And Rep. Owens is really well connected, really supportive of the drought package. And he's a farmer himself. So I think that we haven't worked with him yet, but I think that he will likely be supportive and may be able to help with support from the Republican caucus. And the big takeaway is from Taylor's presentation about the legislature, as you may remember, Taylor shared that we have 22 new House members and we have 6 new Senate members. 6 new Senate members are coming from the House, 5 of them are coming from the House, but we have a lot of new legislators. We also have a lot of legislators that haven't been through a regular session with in-person lobbying. And so we are going to need to educate our legislators about the importance and the benefits, many benefits of soil health. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway from the kind of what we heard and what we're thinking about in terms of, I'll just stop my share here, in terms of the strategy, is that we're going to need to do a lot of education to get those new legislators informed about soil health. And that would be true for all of our issues, I would think. And then let me think about anything else related to strategy that I should share. We may not technically need Republican support to pass every bill, but there won't be money available for everything. And our Healthy Soils bill has a pretty significant fiscal impact. We don't know exactly the fiscal impact, but somewhere maybe around 4 million if we were to keep everything we want in there. And so having broad support can only help with that. And I think that is it. I'm feeling optimistic and hoping that this won't be a bill that we would need to force through without support from Republicans.
Thank you, Megan. Megan, you have a long history of working on bipartisan bills through Farm to School, you know, that always being a very bipartisan bill. This one is obviously more politically complicated. So we really appreciate that. And we have one more. This is by video. So Mason, who is with Oregon Food Bank, is their Double Up Food Bucks organizer. And Mason couldn't be here right now, but sent us a great message. Go ahead, Shin.
Hello, my name is Mason Durfee, and I'm the Double Up Food Bucks organizer at Oregon Food Bank. Today, I'm going to provide a quick overview of Double Up Food Bucks Oregon, the progress we've been making, and our hopes for the 2023 legislative session. Okay, so just to kick us off, a quick overview of who is involved in this work in our state and the key partners. Farmers Market Fund implements the program at farmers markets in Oregon. Pacific Northwest Community Supported Agriculture supports the program at farm CSAs, and Oregon Food Bank has been taking the lead implementing the program in the grocery stores and brick and mortar spaces. So what is Double Up Food Bucks? Well, simply put, Double Up Food Bucks supports SNAP customers to purchase more fresh fruits and vegetables every time they use the program at participating farmers markets, CSAs, and grocery stores. And it's a one-to-one match. So for every $1 in SNAP that they're spending, they earn $1 in Double Up Food Bucks. And we actually had the opportunity to create a video this year that provides an awesome overview of the program. So I will play that for you now.
Buying nutritious and fresh, locally grown fruits and vegetables just got even better with Double Up Food Bucks. How? When you use your Oregon Trail EBT card, also known as SNAP or food stamps, at participating farmers markets and grocery stores, Double Up Food Bucks doubles each dollar you spend. Here's how it works. Let's say you spend $20 using SNAP at a participating farmers market or grocery store. You can get $20 more in Double Up Food Bucks to spend on fruits, veggies, fresh cut herbs, or a Veggie Start. That's an extra $20 of fresh fruits and veggies for you and your family. Do you buy produce through your local CSA? When you pay with SNAP, Double Up Food Bucks will pay for up to $250 of your annual share. Find out how you and your family can enjoy more fresh, delicious fruits and vegetables all year long. Just visit doubleuporegon.org and learn more about how the program works and which grocery stores, farmers markets, and CSAs participate in Double Up Food Bucks. That's doubleuporegon.org. Double Up Food Bucks Oregon is made possible with support from our partners, Farmers Market Fund, Oregon Food Bank, and Pacific Northwest CSA Coalition.
Okay, it's going to bring us back to the PowerPoint here. And hopefully that was a helpful overview for folks just to kind of wrap their head around all the different places that Double Up Food Bucks is operating in our state. I'm going to move us forward to, where is Double Up Food Bucks now? Well, a huge update that happened at the end of 2021 was that we were able to increase the daily match limit from $10 to $20. And this really allowed us to double the impact of the program during a time with really, very, very high inflation and high food prices impacting the community. So that increase of that daily match limit is something that I think has been really supportive right now for folks who are facing a really high cost of living in our state. And I also wanted to share that some of our goals moving forward. So in 2023 to 2024, we anticipate that there will be 80 farmers markets, 10 farm stands, 45 grocery stores, and 40 community supported agriculture sites operating this program. And that will be in 34 of Oregon's 36 counties. So we have really been in a place of growth and development with the program. And we really have only continued to see a high rate of use from SNAP shoppers. Okay, so just to kind of give you a sense of what that high use and high increase of usage has looked like, this chart just kind of talks about, how has the pandemic affected Double Up Food Bucks use? And really from, since 2019, we have actually seen usage quadruple. So it has really been, only growth for our program as we've watched, the cost of food go up, but also that there's, a higher cost also for folks when they go to check out at the check stand, whether they're at a grocery store, a farmer's market, or, purchasing food through their local CSA. So the program continues to grow, and I think we only anticipate continued growth, especially considering that it's forecasted that there'll be a 14% increase in the number of people seeking food assistance moving forward. So I just wanted to highlight what some of our 2023 legislative goals are. One is to certainly secure funding so that we can fund our current level of the Food Bucks distribution. We also want to aim to maintain our $20 match level. And we'd like to expand the number, but also the geographic diversity of participating locations, as well as increase the participation of BIPOC growers and retailers, and really see an opportunity for this program to support the emerging farmers and emerging business owners in our state as they embark on their endeavors as well. And finally, we really hope that part of our legislative work this year can be to secure funding that also allows us to be responsive to the participant feedback that we've been getting over the last few years. We really want to make some changes to the program so that we reduce barriers to participation. Okay, so to really just kind of wrap up, I wanted to share that we are currently working with Representative Marsh as well as Senator Gelser-Bluen on drafting a bill. And once that bill is still in development, but once we kind of have the bill draft, we'd love to share it with everyone. I also am going to highlight that we will have the video, the explainer video that I showed earlier, in 9 different languages. So if folks within the OCFSN network would like to share out more information about Double Up Food Bucks, we hope to have that available and would love to share it with you. So please be in touch if you would like to use that video to educate and communicate about Double Up Food Bucks to your communities that you work with. All right, well, thank you.
Hey, that's awesome. The one thing I was wondering, Sammy, maybe you could address this, is I think you all probably still feel pretty good about the chances for Double Up Food Bucks in the new legislature, and especially with the new governor, given her background. Any comments on if anything's changed since the election? Or are you all feeling good, like you'll have bipartisan support?
Yeah, thanks for your question. I'm not a Double Up Food Bucks expert. I'm pretty new to OFB, but I can try to answer that question. So I don't think there's been any major changes since the election. I think that we're still feeling really positive about it because it's been such a successful program. And then also Governor-elect Kotek, she used to work at Oregon Food Bank. And so she's like, it's a big priority to her, food access and food assistance. And so I think that will continue to be the case now that she is governor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So thanks to everyone who provided these updates. I'm going to hand it over to Eric. We're shifting into the last part of our meeting, and this is sort of the wrap up and next steps piece. But go ahead, Eric, tell the folks how we're going to keep track of all this.
Yeah, so we're just going to be continuing the use of the bill matrix and the bills to watch from previous years. And basically, the bill matrix just contains all that information about the bills and legislative actions that OCFSN members and the partners support in the 2023 session. So the bill matrix is the more detailed one, and the bills to watch document will be a kind of truncated and more streamlined version to just easily scan through. And so we're categorizing the bills and stuff into food and farming, other member priorities, allied partner priorities, and EIJ focused topics. And so basically, I'm just going to take you through the bill matrix real quick. This is just a screenshot from the bill matrix. there's a, certainly more than this, but this is just a small snippet. So yeah, it's just going to be the type of policy. So funding, budget regulation, rulemaking, whatever else. And then the topic, the member's stance, information on the bill title or number, and the description of it. Who's monitoring it, so you can get a point of contact and what its status is. And so the next slide is a overview of the other member priorities. It's got the same content really. So this is just focused on non-food and farming related stuff. And the last thing here is the simple version, right? So this is the format that the bills to watch document will take. It's basically just the title of the bill, gives you a summary, the importance of it, and the contact information for the organization and the people who are watching it. And these are the links on the top right corner to all of those documents. We also have a supplemental matrix this year for federal stuff and legislative agency or state agency related content as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Eric. So I put in the chat also a link to the policy page that we have on our OCFSN website. And if you scroll down to the blue part on the bottom and click on bills we watched, you'll see the report backs from the 2019, 2021, and 2022 sessions. We didn't do one in 2020. But this has really proven useful. The matrix can be sort of mind-boggling. It has a lot of different things, and it's really important for all of us to see the breadth of the legislation that's happening across all of these issues and think about interconnections. And we may be focused on farm and food issues a lot in this group, but especially around equity issues, there's a lot of things we need to pay attention to that aren't farm and food related, that are really about advancing equity in the state on multiple levels. So thanks, Eric, for summarizing and for tracking all of that. We will make sure, I'll answer that in a second, Aaron. We'll make sure that everyone has access to those things. Aaron asks about budget advocacy. Yes, I think that we have put things in this matrix in the past just to keep track of, it's not a bill, but this is a budget issue. So it's a place where we collect all of that. And we have put that in our bills to watch summaries as well. So yes. Thank you, Eric. And we just have a few more minutes. Please do, if there are bills and budget issues that you want to make sure we all know about, please send those to Eric. His email address is right up there. And the Community Food Systems at the Legislature Working Group will have its next meeting the week of December 12th. I can't remember which day and time at this very moment, but Eric, maybe you could put that in the chat. But if you're not already signed up for that group, you can also email Eric if you want to be added. And let's just wrap up with, okay, there's a lot of info here today. Do you have any thoughts about, like, what's one thing you learned, you heard, and maybe one thing that you think we might want to take up as a group going forward? Because we are planning to do another mini convening as the session gets going once we know about specific bills that are going. Yeah, other topics that are coming to mind for y'all. Raise your hand or put them in the chat.
Go ahead, Alice.
Hi, this is not a specific question. It's actually more of an announcement, but Friends of Family Farmers is having our annual rally for small farms issues. And this year, because of the closures at the Capitol, we are going to be hosting it in conjunction with the Lane County Farmers Market and the city of Eugene here in Eugene, which is my closest large urban center. So look forward to more information about that, but it's going to be on March 5th. That's a Sunday, and we hope that you all will be able to join us. We will be providing transportation from other parts of the state, and if you are interested in hearing from some of the folks on this call, as well as legislators and community members in a rally format at the Farmers Market Pavilion, please join us on March 5th. So excited.
Thanks, Alice. One of my favorite pictures that I use when I give talks about what OCFSN does together as a network related to public policy is the last Farmers at the Capitol day. You know, it was a beautiful moment. Andrew, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, great to share the space with everyone and learn about, hear from Rep. Helm and talk with folks in the breakout rooms. I think there's a lot of deeper conversations on things like Oregon land use, drought relief that we can be helping facilitate in the Farming for the Future working group for folks interested in that. And was chatting with Lauren. I think we'll do some more deeper dives as a full network on those as well, and I'll help facilitate that. Yeah, also keep an eye out for legislative meetings with legislators at the February 2nd and 3rd Farming for the Future working group convening in Salem. So we'll send more info on that.
Thank you, Andrew. And yes, Megan, we can share that. Eric, could you pop please into the chat the link to the matrix? It's really important for everyone to understand that OCFSN materials cannot be considered private or protected. We have too many people in this network. We share out, we're transparent. If you have things that you don't want other people to know about, you can bring them up at a meeting, but make sure you know what's happening with the recording, because our goal at OCFSN is to help all of our members and partners have the info they need and want. But we understand that policy also requires periods of strategy and private strategy development. So just be careful about that. Question about the soil health bill. Megan, that's for you.
Where can we learn more about the soil health bill? It's still under construction. You can just reach out to me and I'll share info with you. I've got lots of info, and I'll be doing some information sessions too, which I'll be sure to share out with OCFSN.
Awesome.
Great, thanks.
And thanks for putting that. Oh, there are two things you put in the chat, Eric. What are the two things? One is the matrix and one is, oh, the supplemental. Okay, so everyone, anybody who's been with us for a few years knows that our matrix has focused on the legislature and acts of the legislature, whether it's a bill or a budget issue or whatever. We care about other things, federal legislation, the Farm Bill, agency rulemaking, agency actions. We have now tried to create a space where we can at least just keep track of it. So that's that supplemental matrix we've created. It's not a great communication tool. It is a holder of information. Alice, go ahead.
I have another announcement. Thank you all so much for your patience. But FOF, in addition to our legislative work, we are doing some advocacy skills workshops that are going on November, December, and January, and our December programming is next week. So next Tuesday evening, Brittany will put the link in the chat. We are hosting a workshop with Piccoon on how to craft and deliver effective legislative testimony. So if you are excited in getting into the legislative session and you want to speak in committee hearings to support the legislation that you care about, but you've never done it before, you're not sure what to expect, please attend our workshop next Tuesday evening. And we are also hosting an information session on our bill to expand raw milk sales outlets and access on Thursday of next week in the evening as well. Look in the chat for those links and we look forward to connecting you. Thanks.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, Greg, it's the last one. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks. I just wanted to let folks know on that other things that we might be paying attention to. Next year, the Board of Agriculture is going to be updating a whole bunch of their policy statements on tax policy, on what can be built on farmland, on overall farmland protection, on aggregate mining on agricultural land. And those policy statements, they take public input when they do that, and then they guide the Board of Ag's policies going forward, their positions on all kinds of things going forward after that. We don't have dates on when those are going to be done yet, but they're going to be updating at least 5 of their policy statements that are probably relevant to this group in the next year. And I'll try to remember to put those on that supplemental matrix when I find out when they are.
So this is a great way for us to wrap up this meeting, because I want you to look around and see the names and the faces of folks who are here. Think about the many other folks who are OCFSN members and also part of our network. This network exists for you to share information like that. And we need your help in making sure that it doesn't get lost in a statement that's spoken out loud and no one follows up on. So let's all support each other in getting this info out and then following up on it. Thank you, Greg. That sounds really important. And I really appreciate all of you spending time with us this morning. Summary notes will be coming out. Thank you very much, Eric and Shin and the planning committee. And we will figure out next steps when it's time. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day.